Okay, fantastic. Welcome to the video on opening principles. We covered these opening principles at our training session, and I want you to watch this video every time you need to refresh on them, because I'll give 5 of them, the full 5 principles with examples here, so that you fully understand what they are and how to apply them in a game. So I'll use random examples, not necessarily games played or anything like that, but what I just want you to get in this video is that the opening has principles, and those 5 principles, if you follow them, you're doing all right. You're not going to be checkmated early in the game. You're going to actually secure an advantage. Okay, enough talking of that. The first principle you want when you play chess is control the center. What is the center in a chessboard? The center is, first of all, these first 4 squares. We call these ones the small center. And then you have the larger center. How much influence you place in this particular zone in a chess game determines the outcome of the game, whether you win or lose. So the first principle of openings is to control the center. The second principle is to develop your pieces with a purpose. What do I mean by that? Okay, let's say in a scenario you play e4, e5. It would be pointless to play the knight here, because honestly it doesn't do anything. Could be playable, but it doesn't do anything. So the second principle means develop with a purpose. Knight develops, and the purpose behind this move is attacking the pawn, at the same time clearing a piece here, so that when the bishop moves, white can castle and put his king on a safe side. You notice that black will repeat the same act by defending the pawn with the knight and getting a piece out, you see. So this is the second principle of chess. Develop with a purpose. The third principle of chess is of chess openings is to put your king into safety. Now I very aptly named it put king into safety. I did not call it castling as some books do, because what if you have a scenario where your opponent is waiting for you? Let's say after e4, e5, you play knight c3, you play queen h4, and you play, let's say, just for argument's sake, knight here, knight here, knight here, knight there, and you say, well, coach said I should castle, and then you castle, and you're castling into checkmate. So it's not castle early in the game, it's much more put your king into safety. That's the purpose, that's the aim of that particular rule. So let's take for instance a real example where how a person achieves this, during a game. So knight f3, knight c6, and then you play bishop, let's say here, bishop b5, let's say a random opening like knight e7, castles. This would make sense because you're putting your king into safety, you're preparing to open up the center in the middle game, and this is all good. So that's the third principle, put your king into safety. The fourth principle has got to do with a very funny basic. You've seen the rule written, I think, do not move your queen early in the game. Okay, that's nice for someone who's starting, but at the competitive level, it depends with the variation where you put your queen. The principle is put a queen on a good square. So let's go e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop e, let's say bishop b5, a6, bishop e4, knight here. I'm just giving you a proper variation, castles, bishop e7, okay, e1, on b5, bishop here, d6. You'll notice that none of these guys have touched the queens. They've moved quite a few moves, and none of them have touched the queens. Why? It's because in this position, the queen is good exactly where it is. You don't need to move it around. But you get sometimes a variation like e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6, knight takes, d6 here. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with moving the queen early, because you're threatening something. and black has to do the same, otherwise he loses a piece. So knight here, let's say take, and in this position, although it's like passed from opening, maybe we are still in opening theory, this position is quite playable for white or for black. It's not a major catastrophe. The thing is, your queen has to be on a good square. You notice that in some openings, let's say knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, let's say bishop e7, or let's say knight c6. Sorry. Bishop c4, let's say bishop e7, castles, d6, e3, castles. Let's say, for argument's sake, black plays that. Now, the good square for the queen has changed. Now he has to move to d2, and it's good again. So that's something you have to always look like where you are putting a queen. What is a good square? It's a square where the queen can have influence and not be harassed by black pieces or by what piece, depending on which side you play. So that's the third principle. Is the fourth principle is the queen on a good square, and the last principle we're going to deal with is an important one. And first of all, let me show you something. There is a problem with the initial position of the chessboard. The rooks at the edge of the board are all not protected. They are the only pieces on the chessboard not protected. So the one aim of your development is to make sure that these pieces are connected. So let's take this scenario where you play let's say, okay, knight f3, let's go okay, knight f6 here. Okay, sorry, this is not what I want you to look at. I'm looking at something like this. Sorry, let's say something like, okay, bishop c4, knight f6, castles, bishop e7, knight c3, castles, d3, d6, bishop g5, let's say e5 for argument's sake. Okay, in this position, white is to play queen d2 to honor the fifth principle, which is connect these rooks. Very, very important. I mean, another indirect way you could look at it is that if these rooks are communicating, it means you've developed every piece. So once you've accomplished that, you can start looking at how do you attack in a position, how do you do this, and how do you do that. But first of all, complete your development, and you should be fine in terms of your position.